It's never been easier to be mediocre. I would describe myself as an artist first, then everything else.
Joss Monzon is a Mexican creative director, artist, and producer based in Toronto, Canada. His passion is to take branding, technology, art, and narrative to the limits of what's possible.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference between branding and marketing?
Your personal brand is your reputation.
Joss has been creative director of the Toronto Star, Canada's most important newspaper, Virtualware, a leading Spanish company in virtual reality, Impact Theory, producer of Asura, the biggest film in the history of China, and currently creative consultant of Exma.
What is social media is word of mouth amplified. There is someone that needs your knowledge.
What's something that the viewers can do to start building their brand today?
Well, the first thing that I would say is
Welcome back to another episode of The Content Era, a podcast by creative entrepreneurs for creative entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Sebastian.
Jasmina?
And today we have Joss Monzon with us.
Welcome, Joss. Thank you for joining us today.
thank you for having me, guys.
Yeah, we're very excited to have this conversation with you. You are a guru when it comes to branding and creativity. Always admired you for everything that you've done. So it's a really exciting conversation that we're going to be having today.
Thank you, guys.
So if we were to take a step back to the very beginning days, tell me about like how you got into the creative industry. Was it just schooling? Was it something that you knew when you were early on, younger?
Yeah, it's been in my blood always. Since I was maybe 4 or 5, I started doodling, drawing, and then I was always drawing, always drawing. In school, in every corner of every math book and science book, I couldn't care less about math, chemistry, physics, or whatever, like that kind of stuff. You know, I pretty much during my school years, I tried to pass. That was my goal, to pass, you know, so I can do stuff that actually was important for me, which was doing creative stuff, which at that time I didn't know. People thought I was lazy or something, but I wasn't. I was just not molded for that kind of education.
And this was all in Mexico, and then you moved to Canada. So I recently saw a video that you put out on your Instagram telling a story of one of the entrepreneurial things that you did to get yourself to Canada. Can you tell us a bit of that story?
Which one is this one? The one with the with the watches? No.
The watches, yeah. I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, well, that was funny. Well, I mean, that's the thing, you know, once you have a purpose, which is something that I've like my dad always taught me, you know, like you have to have a goal and a purpose in order to get somewhere, you know, because if not, it's just having like being in a field with no goals, so you are kicking the ball just like anywhere, you know, and that's pretty much how most people are in the world, kind of thing, you know. So in that case, my goal was to come to Canada, and that's funny, the story, because since I was like around 10, there's this comic book that is called Smokey Bear, and Smokey Bear was this bear. I don't know if you're familiar with the Smokey Bear, but Smokey Bear is forest ranger in Canada that takes care. Yeah. You know what? Yeah, it's very, very, very old. Maybe it's from the 50s. So to me, Canada was always like somewhere that I wanted to come, you know. Then in the second year of university, a bunch of friends and myself, we had a course on branding and logo design by Lance Wyman. This guy, he's like a superhero in graphic design. He designed the logos for the San Diego Zoo and I don't know, the Mexican Olympics. When was the 70 what? 67? Anyway, so the guy told us, you know what? I know the guy that designed the Sky Dome in Canada, in Toronto. And if you want, I can recommend you to go and meet him, and maybe you can work there. So we were in I was in the second year of design, and we started this micro studio to make money. We were five of us to make money to come to Canada to meet the guy that built the Skydome. So we call it Pro Cana. Pro Canada. That was the name of the studio. So created a logo and everything. So we actually work till we got $1,000 each. So we say, you know what? No more university, and we left. we came to Canada. But funny enough, we didn't call the guy from the Skydome, or whatever. So actually, we arrived in Canada to his door. And then, hey, something Mueller. It was his last name. So we arrived, five guys. Oh yeah, Lance Wyman sent us. What? Lance Wyman sent you to do what? Well, he told us that you were going to give us a job. And he's like, what? Can you imagine how idiots we were at the time? Anyway, the guy told us, I can give you a tour of the studio. But that's about it, you know. So that was very disappointing for us. And then we obviously started working as dishwashers in the restaurants, illegal, all that stuff.
Not quite the same.
Not quite the same thing. But anyway, so came back to Mexico, finish the graphic design. Got married with my wife, which I met also in the university. But graphic design I didn't make much, you know. I made like just barely to get by, you know. Even though I was working for like huge brands, so that's Mexico, you know. That's Mexico. It's like no one has budgets, but they want amazing stuff. Anyway, still like that. It's very sad, but it's still like that.
Are you sure it's just Mexico?
Canada too.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, Canada is pretty bad. You know, like the US is not bad at all, but Canada is horrible, and Mexico is pretty bad. But anyway, so no money. So, but we applied to come to Canada, you know, to live here and stuff, and it took like 1 month for us to get the permit, you know, to come to Canada. And then I was like, whoa, we have the paper and we don't have money. So anyway, so I'm in this baptism of my nephew, and my wife's uncle had this beautiful Rolex. Yes. And I was like, wow, man, you're making big bucks from your shop. He's like a car shop. And I'm like, no, man, no, this is almost original. I was like, what? So I look at it and it was like unbelievable, you know. So I went next way to the corner of his shop, and there was the kid selling Rolexes and Cartier and whatever, all these brands for beautiful watches, like beautiful copies, but for very cheap. So, you know, so I with all the money that I had in the bank, I bought 3 watches. Imagine how much money I had in the bank. That was it. But anyway, we went to Leon, which was my city, sold them in a second, like really, like it was like toot 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 in an hour, you know. And I charged, and I got 1,000% markup, you know. And obviously I sold them also as amazing copies, you know. Never sold them as originals ever in my life, you know, because I sold them to my friends. You want me to tell this story, the whole story?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because this is the weirdest thing. This only can happen in Mexico. So I went back to Mexico to this kid, and I bought, you know, like another 7 watches. Came back to Leon, which is 4 hours away. So drive 4 hours, come back 4 hours. Sold them in like maybe 4 hours. All the 7 watches. I was like, okay, this is awesome. So wait a little bit because I was tired of driving, but I went back like 2 days later, and the kid didn't have any more watches. So I was like, what's going on, kid? Where are the watches? And then he said, well, you bought them all. I said, yeah, I bought them, but you have to buy more watches for me. So I was pretty like disappointed. But the kid, very nice. He's like, don't worry, man. I can take you to my dealer, and you pay me $40, 40 pesos per watch
Wow.
that you buy, which was nothing. So next day I show up to where the kid told me. We went to Tepito. Tepito is like this area which it's extremely dangerous. So if you really don't know where to go, there were places where the police this is, I don't know, 25 years ago. I don't know how Tepito is today, but 25 years ago it was already dangerous. You know, you go there, you go inside, you buy whatever, a TV or something, and then you go out. You get mugged by the same guys that sold you the stuff, so they will take the yeah, the TV, and they will sell it again. So that's how it works over there. Anyway, so we went to this place inside of Tepito. I was really nervous. So the guy was like, "What's your name?" I'm like, "I'm gonna tell him my name," but the guy is like, "You don't tell me your name, idiot." I mean, he used another word, like worse than that. But I'd say, your name is Jose Manuel. I'm like, okay, so Jose Manuel, he was the araña, la araña, no? Then he took the spider. Then he took me to this other place, just by this. He had like this little booth selling Casio watches and stuff like that, like legal stuff. But then he got obviously the other place where he sold all these other watches, like hundreds of watches or thousands. So I choose some watches. The guy, it was like 30. I asked him for a discount. I think I just look at me like, what? Anyway, obviously he didn't answer. And then I pay him with a check. Imagine this. So the guy is like, are you mad? He actually said yes. So I wrote the name, gave it to him, and he said, I'm gonna take you out, because then if not, you will not be out of here alive. So he took me out. Anyways, not to give you the long story short, is that I came back maybe every week for the next 3 months. I became really good friend with this guy, so I would call him before coming. He would have like a big party, food and beer and whatever. And after that, I would buy the watches, and then he would took me, and there I go. So in León, which is my city, I started selling the watches to super rich people. Because the funny thing, my dad was a gynecologist, and he was the doctor of the rich women there. So I knew a lot of, and I knew a lot of people, like owners of factories and whatever. So I would go there. They would buy like 3, 4, 5 watches at a time, and then there was time that I went to the bank, and then in Mexico, I don't know, there's this lady, someone greeting you. Hi, welcome. What are you going to do here? And then it happens that the lady at the door was a patient of my dad. So, because my dad was also, he didn't only see rich women, he see anybody, So I say, oh yeah, how you doing, Elisa, or whatever his name was. I think it was Elisa. So I say, you want to buy a watch? And then she's like, I don't have money. And she looks over there, and they're like, you know what? That Mr. Whatever, he is very rich, and he really likes watches. I can tell him. I say, yes. So and she's like, go to that office over there. It's empty. I'll send it to you. I'll send him to you. So I go sit down in the office, in the bank. And then Mr. Whatever goes, and then I sell him 3 watches. So I'm thinking, maybe I'm gonna give her a commission for every client she sends me to here. So after that day, I would come to my office at the bank to sell watches to the clients. That was insane.
Wow.
There was one day that the manager of the bank, he came and apologized to me that I couldn't use the office today, but I could use, because they were doing some kind of whatever, but I could use the meeting room. So I was like, this is awesome. Anyway, people would tell me, host, don't go to Canada, man, you're making a killing here. Like, this is crazy. But then going back to the purpose, my purpose wasn't make money. My purpose was coming to Canada. So in 3 months, I make enough money to live here for a year. You know, so that was pretty amazing. So anyway, that's the story of using your creativity. One, saying yes, and even when you are afraid of doing, I mean, imagine this. I was the son of a very recognized doctor, graphic designer for a, good university, selling pirated watches. I couldn't care less, because there's the purpose, you know?
That I think goes to show that's the testament of your entrepreneurial spirit,
Yeah.
but also creativity.
Yeah.
And I didn't know the full extent of the story. I only knew up to the point where you went to Leon, but not when you kept coming back and the bank. That's really funny. So take us, you get to Canada, and what was your career now stepping into this ideal role that you wanted to be as a graphic designer? Like, guide us through that growth journey as a young, enthusiastic, creative professional entering this new country and this industry in a different country.
Yeah. Well, that was pretty tough because in Canada, I don't even know any other country, but in Canada, what they ask you for is the Canadian experience or something like that. I think it's called Canadian experience. And then how can you have Canadian experience if you just arrived? So it was very idiotic, So I was like, okay, I'm never gonna get a job here, because I have zero Canadian experience. So what I did is, okay, I'm gonna start looking at whatever job. I was just I didn't know what to do. So you start thinking on importing things from Mexico, like ceramics or whatever, things like that. But then you realize that here nobody cares. Like nobody cares about Mexican stuff. When you buy Mexican stuff, is when you go as a tourist, you go there and you buy the stuff, not here.
Yeah.
So, but then at the Toronto Star, I got a friend that I was working there, and he told me there's a job that you can apply to, which is a graphic designer, blah blah blah. So they posted on the newspaper, so I applied, and luckily I had all my portfolio with all my clients from Mexico, and I did work for huge firms, like especially in the industry, leather, like Flexi, the shoes, Flexi, Emiko, like a lot of different brands like that. Yeah, and also I work I created a brand that is called Quadra, which then became really really huge, and then we went and opened different stores, like a lot of different stores in Mexico. That gave me a lot of knowledge on branding, applying the branding to an actual business. Then also I was part of the buying, so I was actually buying the articles to sell in the different stores. So that was like a very very important part of my life, because then as a graphic designer, or when you get out of the career and you're a graphic designer, the reality is you are not only that, you are many things. So at that time I realized that I was a graphic designer, industrial designer, environmental designer, but also a salesman and a cleaner, and like whatever, like all that kind of stuff that gives you more power, more knowledge, more experience. Then actually, so I did the branding for the most important bar in Mexico. It was called La Paradoja del Gato, the cat's paradox. So imagine I was working 9 to 8 in the store, and then 8 to 4 a.m. in the bar. But in the bar, I met Alejandro González Iñárritu, which then he was a DJ for a famous radio station, but today is one of the most awarded filmmakers in the world. So he made The Revenant, Birdman, all those films. and the sound designer of his films, Martin Hernandez, he was also going to the Paradoja del Gato. So we became like super good friends, you know. So later in life, so you never know, but later in life they became super famous, and then when I contact them, you know, they still my friends, they still the same guys, you know, and that gave me the power to actually do my dreams and my career possible, you know, and that's something that is important, not from, you know, as a life lesson, you know, like never close doors ever, you know, because you never know what's gonna happen later, you know. But anyway, going back to the Toronto Star, so I applied, and I think the funny thing is, so I brought my portfolio, but I speak like very little English, you know. So most people would be really afraid of even applying for a job like that, and then later, the guy that interviewed with me, which was the creative director at that point, he told me that he hired me because of 50% of my portfolio, but 50% of my personality. And he was saying, you know what, this guy doesn't speak English, he will learn. He lives in Canada, you know, so he wasn't worried about the language barrier or the Canadian experience, you know. So that was very gracious of him. And that's how I got to work at the Toronto Star. I started as a graphic designer.
And I'm curious, your transition into more of a branding focus, like how did that come about? Was that from the Toronto Star, or was that just kind of acquired throughout time? Because you put a lot of emphasis on building a brand, and really that being like the keystone of all of your marketing efforts thereafter. So how did you develop that that skill set of branding, and what are some of the lessons that you learned along that path?
Yeah, and that actually didn't learn in university. You know, in university, it was all about design. But the weirdest thing is that design is nothing. Like design is nothing without the story behind, like that, which is branding. You know, so in the university they would focus so much in the rhythm and the balance and the contrast and the whatever, on the form, you know, the form. But later you learn that there is form and function. So function is the most important one, and then form is really secondary. So you know, so the best example is the Nike logo. So the Nike logo is actually nothing. It's not beautiful. It's not balanced. You know, the shape is whatever. But what the reality is, what is the meaning of this logo? So meaning is what they didn't teach me in university, which is the most important thing. You know. So so at the Toronto Star, obviously when I entered to this industry of the newspaper, you think that a newspaper, the business is news, but the business really is advertising, you know. So without advertising there was no newspaper, you know. So I actually learned branding from the salespeople. The salespeople would come and say, Jos, this is not powerful enough, you know, but it's beautiful. Yes, it's beautiful, but it doesn't work, you know. So the thing is, no matter how beautiful something is, if it doesn't work, which is branding, it is useless, you know. So that's where, and then after that, when I started learning screenwriting, because before I started to learn screenwriting, I started to learn animation. And then once I started learning animation, it's like, okay, now I know how to animate, but what's the point if there's no story behind this little ball or this little whatever, you know? So that's okay. So it's like the learning curve was, I had no teachers, there was no YouTube, you know, so it was pretty tough to learn at that time, you know. But anyway, that's how the branding started. Like my passion for branding started.
So it started at the Toronto Star.
Yes.
Your passion for branding.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Wow. And yeah, like you're saying, really understanding that anything that you do has to be essentially tied to meaning, and meaning is given to it by the stories that you tell. That's really interesting. We often encounter, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and the mindset of something doesn't look good enough, or like there's too much attention on the aesthetic and not enough attention on the story that it's carrying. And that's really like what we want to really do, is help people build powerful personal brands through storytelling, right? And now in the content era, 2024, the ability to have a phone, a phenomenal camera at your disposal at all times is just such a good tool to be able to tell a story through content, and sharing that consistently on social media.
100%. So you kind of touched on the difference between branding and design. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between branding and marketing?
The difference between branding and marketing.
Well, why don't we define, if you could help define branding first, I think that'll give us a context, and then we can get into what the difference between branding and marketing.
Yeah, well, branding is, I don't know if you know how branding started, but I think it's very important to understand like why it's called branding and how it started. So before, whatever number of years before, so there was cattle. You know this, yes? Do you know this story?
Yeah.
Cows. So if someone steals your cow, then and you go, hey, that's my cow, and they will say, no, it's my cow. So you wouldn't know if that's your cow or that's my cow. So then that's why they actually came up with a brand, like a metal, so they put it in the cow, and then okay, that's your cow. Yeah, that's a symbol, that's yours. Okay. So they started doing that also in boxes, because when they will send this on the train, I would say my tomatoes, and the other guy would send his tomatoes, and then you wouldn't know which tomatoes which is which. So they would actually start doing the same thing from the cows in the boxes. Okay. So then, okay, so these are Jose's and these are Sebastian's. Beautiful. But then someone actually started doing this, the thing in the metal. ¿Cómo se llama esto? In the metal.
The iron, I guess.
Yeah, in the iron. Yes. So make it actually more beautiful, with more design. So they would put it in the box. So the box from Sebastian is actually more beautiful than Jose. So people would start buying more tomatoes from Sebastian than from me. And that made no sense. And because nobody actually knew that, okay, but you know what, this is more beautiful, then I suppose the tomatoes are better,
Essentially choosing the packaging over the product.
That's exactly it, but they didn't know. It was just like all empirical, and they were started just doing this thing until today. So there was one thing that they started putting this beautiful woman, and then they understood that sex sells. That's pretty much it. So that's the thing. Sex sells. That's what they understood, and advertising blew up, because what they understood is, okay, if I have this beautiful woman with this beautiful package, with this beautiful logo, then the product becomes meaningless. Meaningless. It's like a perfume, It still works today. So then what you want is to put the brand on my brain, and it's all about emotions. What do when I see a logo? What is the emotion that I feel? People are mixed up. They think is what I think when I see a logo. It's not what I think, it's what I feel. So clear example is this. I was in China, and then in China, everything is in Chinese. So it's not like when you go to Korea, there's Chinese and English. In China, everything is in Chinese. It's impossible to take a bus, or it's impossible, But then if you're walking and then suddenly you see a yellow M, it's like, what? The feeling of safety, You go to the restaurant, you ask for a Mac, whatever, and so everything is just like here. you know. So that's branding. It doesn't matter if it's crap, it doesn't matter, you know. So but to me, McDonald's it means safety in China, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
So
Wow.
that's branding. That is branding to me. So all that is actually what's the story and what's the promise behind the symbol, behind the logo. So
Yes.
and the fulfillment of the promise. That's pretty much it.
And between, how would you differentiate branding from marketing in that regard?
That's a question that I don't know if I'm gonna answer right. But I'm gonna make it up, man, because so I'm working with so many marketers today, you know. So marketing is how do you strategize? What is the strategy to actually get to the person that wants what you have? You know. So
Yeah.
so talking with with marketers, pretty much is this: what is the pain of your audience? So it's much more about understanding who is going to buy your thing, you know. But then you need to understand that your audience, they have a pain, and then you have the cure, you know. So that's, and then how are you going to get this thing to their attention, you know. That's marketing, you know. So marketing would come to me and then host, this is the guys, these are the guys that want this, you know. uh, and they dress in black and they paint their eyes and blah blah blah. So okay, then I come up with a copywriter with an advertising campaign, you know. And then I give that to these guys, the marketing guys, and then they will look at the numbers and all this data and whatever and try to sell it. Yeah, so that's pretty much but there is a huge difference. So to me, I couldn't care less about marketing. Like, I hate marketing. Why? Because it's all about numbers and strategies and all this stuff. And I don't, you know, give me, so I tell the marketing guys, give me what you need, I'll do it, you know. And then we do two things, and then they do a B test. This one didn't work, this one worked amazingly, thank you, host, you know. And that's pretty much it.
So when it comes to branding and marketing and their relationship, marketing is pushing out that brand and basically communicating the or placing the brand in front of the people that have certain pains and certain desires and making that brand apparent to them as a solution to those problems. But the brand has to be highly appealing, right?
For that niche, yes.
I would also say branding is the foundation for marketing, right? You can't, it would be hard to market yourself or your business if you don't have that branding foundation.
Yes.
When it comes to like a personal brand, it's like how similar, how different is a personal brand from a corporate brand, or how would you differentiate those, like the two from each other?
Well, the personal brand is actually, it's funny because a corporate brand, so corporate is called corporation because it wants to be a body, you know. Like corporate means like a human, let's say, you know. So
Ah, I never thought of it this way.
yeah, so a corporation and a brand really tries to imitate humanity. You know, it wants to be so human that then you can relate. And when you're a human, you're already human. So when you're doing your branding, you don't have to do that. You know. And the awesome thing about your personal brand is that like today you have all these gurus that they teach you how to develop your personal brand or whatever. It's all bullshit. It really is, because your personal brand is your reputation, you know. So so the older you are, and if you make awesome stuff, that is actually your story. That is your brand, you know, and you are so unique, that then there is someone that needs your knowledge, you know, whatever it is. The younger you are, the your personal brand is I wouldn't say it's harder, but because it's all about honesty, you know. So if you have an awesome reputation because you're honest and you do things right and you actually give a lot of value, then that's how your personal brand is humongous. Like Gary Vaynerchuk, you know, like he gives so much value on his what he gives for free, that whenever he sells something, people just buy it, like a book or whatever, you know. But then when you're young and you're just starting, then but you're awesome too. Like you can be young and awesome, you know. Then you have to show that you have to show it by doing, you know. Then people will say this guy is awesome, and in 5 years he's gonna be the king of the world. So I'm going to follow him and I'm gonna learn from this guy too, you know. So it, again, is also marketing strategy. I mean, that's the reality. So you have to think, why am I doing this? For whom am I going? I'm doing this, you know. And after that, then you start actually doing it. So yeah, I guess market. I mean, yeah, I think as a branding, you have to have some kind of like marketing mentality too, because you're ultimately you're working with marketing always. Yeah.
Because you have to be telling your story, right? Like acquiring all this knowledge and experience, like that's all great, but if people aren't if they're not aware of your accomplishments, of your struggles, of in your personal life and in your professional life, it's hard to build that connection, right?
Yes. Yeah, and it's never been easier to be mediocre, guys. It's never been easier, you know, because imagine this. Suddenly you have Canva, you know? So with Canva, it doesn't matter what you do, it always looks beautiful. Yes?
Yeah.
So that's wrong, you know, because we were talking about you don't need beautiful, you need something that actually works. So now that you have something that you do like click and it's beautiful, then okay, it's done. You know, you really didn't actually went through the whole thinking that I mean maybe it should have been really horrible, like horrible, because that was going to attract the attention of whoever was going to buy the product.
Yeah.
You know. But then, so I think these tools, which are amazing, don't get me wrong, like I think Canva is revolutionary, but it's giving you all these templates. The templates are awesome. You know, templates are actually, I mean, After Effects templates, Premiere templates, all this stuff, but it just makes you lazy, you know?
Yeah.
And then everything looks the same. So the awesome thing about branding is that because we are unique, then we also have to develop our stuff the same way. It has to be unique, you know?
It doesn't force you enough, like back to the Canva example, it doesn't force you enough to think hard enough and yeah, to just like step out of the box or think outside the box, right? And then in the end, your stuff ends up looking like everyone else's and ends up looking cookie cutter. So
Yeah. Like it's not hard for entrepreneurs now to have nice designs. Like that's not the hard part. I think the hard part that people are really facing, like entrepreneurs, are authenticity and storytelling. Authenticity of putting yourself out there because you lack the framework of how to really put yourself out there. You lack that brand identity of like who even am I and who do I want to be perceived as? And because that key is missing, then it makes it so much harder. Like no nice logo is going to or design is going to really communicate that. It's more so the body of work. And I think that's where storytelling really comes in, right?
Yes. Yeah, so I have, for example, this guy. I have this book. I recommend this book, man. Guys, it's called Fake Perfection. So his name is James Victory. So he's a designer that was kicked off from two design schools. Like, you're going to go nowhere. And today his stuff is at the MoMA museum and whatever, things like this. Why? That's precisely why, because he was so unique and original that they couldn't just understand the guy, you know. But something that he says is what made you weird. The thing that made you weird is, as a kid, make you great today.
That is so true. That's your unfair advantage.
That's your unfair advantage. That's pretty much it. So why don't use it,
I guess going to school, we're more so programmed to being workers. And
Yeah.
in a way, I think a lot of people lose their individual identity because everyone is going through the same program to end up in the same place. And I think, I think that quote really speaks to that authenticity of embracing those things that, as a kid, you may think that are out of the ordinary or not normal, and therefore maybe a disadvantage. But really, those are the things that make you stand out.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it.
So would you say that, in 2024, it's important for entrepreneurs, business owners to have a personal brand, to, position themselves differently than the rest? For example, an industry like realtors, real estate. It seems that even on social media, I'm not sure if you follow any realtors, but, most of them are doing pretty similar stuff. So would you say that having that personal brand and, having a unique positioning would be the thing that could make them stand out?
100%. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter if you are the owner of a barber shop, lemonade stand. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't really matter. So at the end of the day, when you are dealing with people and you're in front of the store or a brand, you are part of the brand. So so it's also very strategic. For example, you have Elon Musk, and then Elon Musk is very front and center, and from Tesla, he's there, he's here. So both are really important and huge brands, But then you have Virgin, and you have Richard Branson. It's over here, So his brand is also huge, but it's not here like Steve Jobs. He's over here. So what makes you think, like, to me especially, like, here is Sir Richard Branson. He's more elegant, it's more subtle. So it's more expensive, more refined. And then when he's selling Virgin Mobile, then suddenly you're gonna see, okay, this is quality and it's not that expensive, So it uses that, the power of his brand, to make this look cheaper, and then, but with Apple is the opposite, So Steve Jobs was very exclusive, very this guy front, you are the best, I am the best, kind of thing. Then this is expensive. It looks expensive, and I expect that this thing will be expensive, but it's the best.
Right.
But it's not the best. It is not. So I have an iPhone, and I can tell you that an iPhone is better than a Huawei. But in reality, if we put them together, I'm sure I'm wrong. I'm sure Huawei is better in a lot of things. So in branding, what you really want to achieve is not this is better, this is my favorite brand, so that's important. And then, as a designer, going back to the realtors, okay, all the realtors are the same to me, are just like waiters. I'm a waiter, this is the menu, and I have all these things for you. Choose one, and I'll take you to them. That's pretty much it, So I don't care if you are Lolita or Carlos, just I need a house. you know. But then the reality is today I have my favorite realtor. I have one, the one that sold me this house. And I want to, if I want to sell this and buy another house, I will not go ever with anybody else because I have my favorite realtor. Is she the best one? Maybe not, but it's my favorite. You know, and I think that's what you want to be, the favorite. I want your show should be my favorite podcast. Is it the best one? I don't know. I don't care. You know.
So really, it's to bring it back to what you said at the beginning. It's the story that people tell themselves as to why. Essentially, in a way, they convince themselves why they're their favorite realtor in a way.
Yeah.
You know, she's always shows up. She always, you know, brings cookies, or she always follows through with everything she says. And in a way, it's creating this like persona or this idea in the mind of who this person really, what she means to people versus what she does.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Okay. So what's the best way for an entrepreneur to build a personal brand, in your opinion, in today's content era, 2020?
Well, I would say, so today there are many tools. Obviously, social media is huge, you know. So right now, actually, I'm reading a book that I don't have it here, but it's called 90 Days for a Personal Brand or something. But it's written by a guy. His name is Dane Walker.
90-day brand plan.
90-day brand plan. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah, we follow him.
Yeah. So I met Dane in Miami like 2 weeks ago, and you know we pretty much had a little bit of a share the same story, same path kind of thing. So what he did is, okay, first and foremost, you have social media. Good. Then, but what do you do with this thing? How are you? Well, I'm different. How different I am? What is my unique selling proposition? Let's call it. You know, what is my USP as a person? You know, once you actually can write down and tell me this is my USP, then you actually start putting it together every day, Twitter or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Whatever the attention of your market is, your niche market, okay? And then you start putting it together how amazing you are in this for me, you know? So it's not how amazing you are, how amazing you are for me, you know? Because only then I will understand what is so what you want to create is the perceived value, you know? And that perceived value is pretty much how much you helped me. So I heard this many years ago. A guy, he was in a conference, was, okay, guys, all you guys talk about value. Okay, what is value? Okay, so he would ask some guy, and they, well, is, you know, this, that, whatever. So all these different responses. Okay, no, guys, it's so simple. Value equals help. That's it. So easy. So a bar of gold is gonna help me to be rich, to buy whatever I want. A lot of money is gonna help. So money is valuable because it helps me. So because people talk about the paper. So I have a 5 euros here. What is the value of this? The value of this is nothing because it's just paper. You know, well, it's wrong. Wrong. 5 this gives me 2 beers. So it's valuable. It helps me to have 2 beers. You know what I mean? The more I have, the more help I have. So that's easy. So if you think about you as a personal brand, how am I helping you? It has to be so clear, like crystal clear. Because if it's hazy and you come up with this, you know, like whole concept that I help you in this way, blah blah, people don't understand it. It's noise. They won't hire you. That's pretty much it.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's got to be crystal clear because a confused buyer doesn't buy, as they say.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but also, so, you know, funny, I heard another one. It says, nobody buys from clowns. Nobody buys from a clown. So also you have to be very sure that you're not this super funny guy or whatever, because nobody buys from a clown also.
Well, that's interesting because it seems like on social media these days they do actually buy from clowns. It's almost like the more you can entertain them, but also while you educate them or provide some kind of value, aka help, then the more maybe they will attract you, right? But I think it depends too, like whatever everyone's taste is. Like if you're a really serious person, then education or entertainment may not, attract you as well as someone who loves to laugh. So maybe there's a finding a balance, and also like you said, speaking to like your target market or audience.
Yeah.
There was a realtor in Vancouver. I don't know her name, but one time I was driving because I did real estate, photo and video for a few years, my business before coming to Mexico. And I was driving through a neighborhood and I kept seeing this fairy. Like it was signs and they were pink, and there was this fairy like with a wand. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And it was like your neighborhood fairy realtor making magic happen. And I was like, are you kidding me? And so I looked her up, and she had this loyal following of all these people that bought into this brand of her creating magic for you and making things happen with her ability, with her wand. And I was like, this is so bizarre, but so genius, because like nobody else is taking this approach. So in a way, she created or really attracted her niche market of people that are into that fairy tale type of thing. But at the same time, like, bus ads aren't cheap, and I was seeing them all around me. So she was clearly being successful with her positioning, very, very unique positioning that was different than your traditional door knocker or, in a blue suit type of realtor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think this kind of they made really good for a case study, like because it would be super interesting to actually go and figure out like what or why that worked, because then you saw it and you say, well, this is garbage, but then actually you realize that actually worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just being different.
Being disruptive, I think, is huge. Like,
Yes.
Like, not to pick on realtors, I keep bringing them up. It's just the thing that we're talking about. But so many people want to be that realtor with the nice car, with the blue suit, with the nice watch, that is just too many of the same thing. And the individual identity gets lost because you're just another realtor. You're just another person with the same qualities. And I think having part of that unique positioning really is those things that make you stand out from everybody else.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't you say? Yeah.
Well, okay. I also want, if you could touch on a little bit on the idea of positioning. Honestly, that's something that took me a while to wrap my head around. But would you say that what it really is just, again, like your unique value proposition or your USP? Is that really all it is? Because I joined a really good marketer that I, admire, a workshop of his, and he said this quote that stuck to me, and he said that there's no such thing as a saturated niche, but rather saturated positioning. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think everybody has their own experiences, So something that one time Gary Vee said actually was, don't look for the niche, because you are the niche. You are the niche. And that was also very interesting to me, because what are people seeking, And then it doesn't matter what it is, There's people that are looking for cars, there are people that are looking for security and safety, there's people looking for love, whatever, it doesn't matter, So then for you, what actually is interesting, So in my case is design and art and weird stuff and that kind of thing, So then I remember thinking, okay, well, then I want my clients to be my best friends, because then I can hang out with these guys forever, And actually I can sell them what I know, you know, and I think that's so when you talk about like positioning. So that's why, for example, working at an advertising agency or the Toronto Star, as a creative, it's very draining because then you are creating ads for to sell sofas, in a very cheap store somewhere in whatever, and that is not a creative job, and I think that's why when I left, actually, if you go to my website today, like if you go to jossmonzon.com, there's nothing about advertising or marketing, or it's just like like doodles and drawings. Because at one point I actually wanted to just get out of this because I felt that it was so manipulative and fake and horrible, But then the reality is that looking or following people like Donald, like this guy Donald Miller, for example, this book. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Building a
Big
story
fan.
brand. So these guys actually care for story. Actually care, like if you're doing marketing, do something that is actually worthwhile, for you and for your client, kind of thing, So yeah, so I don't know the positioning. There's a lot of manipulation that you can actually use to actually manipulate people in order for them to believe what is your value, and that's where you have all these gurus today selling you, like smoke and mirrors, how to become a millionaire in 6 months and have the secret formula or whatever, So that's why, my
Yeah.
goodness, yeah, this is a pretty sad industry if you think about it, like, because most people believe in what you say, and yeah, so the more you know about this, the more power you have to manipulate people, so
Yeah, that is true. I definitely see that firsthand all over social media. And to be honest, it's gotten to the point where a lot of like our peers will like they're calling it out because, there are people gullible enough to fall for it. And yeah, we want to change the trajectory and hopefully just share more of the story and most importantly just be honest
yeah,
with people.
and I think that's why it's important to show, show, don't tell, like if you actually are
Right.
saying that you are awesome and you're the best realtor or whatever, show it to me, just don't tell it to me, show it to me. Why are you like the best realtor? Why should I trust you with my money?
Yeah. Show the receipts, show the proof.
Show the receipts. I'm going to start working on a huge project, humongous project for real estate in Cancun and that area. And this guy, he sells a lot and all this, a lot of money and a lot of houses, but then now he's like, he wants to understand how he can actually sell more, because he already gives a lot of value, but he wants to sell more, but everything looks the same. So how can he make a difference and differentiate himself from everybody else? And that's a really humongous challenge. So it's gonna be a challenge for me. So I'm gonna let you know what's gonna happen there, because it's real estate.
Ah, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Is that a new thing for you?
Yeah, it's a new
A
thing.
new endeavor?
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, still in the same thing that I do is creative production. You wanna be like a lot of like branding, video, storytelling, all that, websites, all that stuff.
Got to keep it interesting.
Yes.
It's good to challenge yourself sometimes too,
Yeah.
right? No matter how many years of experience you have, keep it fresh.
Yes.
To touch on the point that you had about deception with branding, I think that's where it's really important to understand the long-term commitment to branding. That it's not something that's built overnight. It's not something that's built quickly. It's something that's only really built through consistency and longevity. Like you need to see a long term thing. I think that's where the big misconception with what you were mentioning about marketers offering those quick wins, those quick solutions, and really it's fake, because you can't, like, the reality is, like, nobody that has a big, impactful, memorable brand built it overnight or in 2 months or in 3 months. It's really a sustained effort, and the people that stay on top and are recognizable are the ones that are consistent day in and day out. They're showing up, they're putting themselves out there, and through that they are also being authentic, because they're not only sharing the highlights and the things that they want to sell, but they're also selling the journey and the hardships that they encounter, which I think really builds, like, the authenticity. The vulnerability part builds the authenticity and makes that personal element a lot more relatable, because you start to realize that you're not just like a logo and selling points. You're actually a human being. And if I can understand you and you can understand me better, if we can build that relationship better, then trust is built. And then through trust, you can then leverage trust for conversions, for sales, and all that stuff. So we like to say that through social media or through any marketing avenue, you want to build the know, the like, and the trust factor, right? People need to know you. People need to like you. But most importantly, what you're doing by showing up consistently over time is you're building that trust that you are that person that people can rely on to, if that they were to pay you, then you know they're going to actually take you somewhere. That's one of the biggest things I've kind of wrapped my head around in the last year or so.
Yeah, no, you're right.
So how would you describe the Joss Monzon brand?
Yeah. You know, the weirdest thing is this. So I've never worried about making like a personal brand or anything, but pretty much your personal brand is your reputation. So I've in the last 25 years, I haven't failed any client. Like there was no failure, no late, video or whatever, and I think that's pretty much what Sebastian is talking about. It's trust. So people trust me because I mean I earned their trust, and then it's all word of mouth. That's really like, I mean, I had my website, but I sold zero clients from my website in my life. Never called me, hey, I saw you, So it was all by word of mouth. Yeah. So what is social media? Is word of mouth amplified. That's pretty much it, because at the end of the day, it's word of mouth. Like people are going to follow you, recommend you. Hey, look at this, read this book, da da da. So yeah. So that's my brand. My brand, I would say, is trust and connection. So people always tell me, Jose, you are such a connector, So I think we are all like different gifts. So one of my gifts is actually be a connector and connect myself, and that's a big part of like why I became a good producer is because of that. So because of all the connections that I have. So if someone calls me, I need help, I know this guy, and I call them and they answer because I never failed them, So that's very important. So I would say that's my brand.
And a quick follow-up question on that. So if you were to rebuild your brand from scratch, in this day and age in 2024, would you take the personal brand route? Would you start off on social media, or how would you go about it?
Yeah, social media. Actually, right now, I just started 3 days ago a project that is called Monzoni 1200 because what I did till that day, it's in the past, So let's say I built my brand, I built my reputation until that day, and my dreams and my goals have been fulfilled truly, working the biggest film ever with the biggest everything, like directors and all that stuff was one of my dreams, working like humongous companies, yes, all that. So now I think about it, in 4 years I'm gonna be 60, So usually people at 60 are old, and they think they are old, and they look old, and and I'm like, I don't want to look old, be old, think old, so what am I going to do in the next 12 100 days, 1200, yes, to instead of become a retrospective of Hoss's golden years, it's gonna be a startup starting at 60, but I need to start preparing myself. So I'm gonna actually post stuff that is challenging or whatever I'm learned today to inspire to be an inspiration for myself first, and then to others. Because if I'm not inspired by myself, I think I'm doomed. Yeah, and I don't think this is a selfish thing. I think it's important to surprise yourself every day. Because every day. So we take for granted every day. So we think it's our right to live the next day, and Sebastian knows better. But the next day is a present. It is a present. What are you doing with this present? What are you doing it? So that's so by doing it every day, I'm gonna build my brand, which I hope is gonna bring value to people.
Yeah, and I think you have a lot of value to give, so I'm excited to see what comes of it. Would you also say it's a bit of like a bucket list challenge? Is there any element of that? Or can you kind of give us like, the quick description or lowdown of what the Monzoning 1200 project is?
Well, by then, I hope I wrote a book, shot a film, and also an animated film or an animated something, but with the quality of I don't know, the Minions kind of thing, that kind of thing, So that would be to me really awesome. And then, yeah, that I hope that inspires my daughters and then everybody around me. Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow. Well, good luck. We'll be following along on the journey.
Thank you. Yeah.
When should an entrepreneur or business start building their brand? When is the best time to start building your brand?
Anytime they actually understand that they need a brand. Doesn't matter when, like today, because I think it's like there's a question when you're gonna start investing money. So when is the best time to invest money? Now. Like there's no best time. Same thing with your brand. It doesn't like tomorrow. Yeah, start tomorrow.
It's like that quote goes, the best time was yesterday, the next best time is today. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's the weirdest thing, like you've seen the Bitcoin. Okay, so Bitcoin goes to 60,000. Oh no. Okay, then it goes to 17,000. 17,000. Yeah, I should buy. No, it's gonna go down. Okay, no, I'll wait. And then it goes back to 60,000. Oh, I should have bought it. But you never did anything. You were always complaining, thinking. Same thing with the brand. Same thing. I mean, you're gonna start your personal brand ever if you keep thinking about it.
Yeah. Stop thinking, start doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like what you're doing with the challenge of 1,200 days, because you're committing. I think it goes even further than the trust you've built now. It's like even building more trust, committing to showing up, sharing the journey. And I'm sure throughout that journey, you're going to encounter hardships and difficult times like everybody does. But being invested in wanting to see you succeed, I think is going to build even more, just create more attention and more trust. And what's like the audience will be equally invested in your own project that you're investing in. So it's kind of like a bodybuilder in a way, right? If you show up and you're like, hey, I'm going to train you, like You can say, hey, how many people have you trained, or what's your resume? You can just be like, here's my resume. I show it for myself. I show it for my clients. So in a way, that's the beauty of putting yourself out there on social media. It's like it becomes your body of work, and you leave a paper trail of everything that you've done. So you have more reason for people to trust you and build more opportunities for yourself, really. Because I'm sure throughout this journey, people are going to see that you're putting yourself out there, and they're going to say, hey, I want you to get on our podcast, or I'd like you to come to a speaking event, or I'd like you to produce a film for me. And that's all in the power of the story that you're going to be telling for yourself, and it's going to be shown to your audience, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, you can see Arnold. I don't know if you watched the documentary of Arnold Schwarzenegger on Netflix.
No, I read his book, though.
Yeah, well, you guys. I mean, that's the perfect example of an unbelievable personal brand, you know. And he understood what he needed to do to go to the next step and to the next level and to the next level and to the next level, and every obstacle that he encountered, which is like any awesome story, he was like, okay, my accent is horrible. Okay, what am I going to do about it? Okay, I'm going to use it as an opportunity. And he did it. My name is long and German and difficult. Okay, how am I going to use it in my favor? And all that stuff, he used it to step up instead. But people were pushing him. You are not going to, you're horrible, you're big, all that stuff, you know? Look where he's one of the most famous people in the world, you know? And imagine we all are, so I mean, you guys, you are better looking, younger, more knowledgeable than most people. You speak 2 languages, you know, like imagine that all the stuff that you have that is unfair. You were talking about the fair advantages, you know what? So and obviously everybody says, yeah, you could be rich. Yes, if that's your goal. But the reality is you could, you know, you could. But there's all these fears that because why did I say rich? Because money is a measure, you know. Money and time is an awesome measure, you know. So if you didn't do well in a film, it's just because it sucked, and that's why nobody went to see it, you know. Same thing with you. So if you're awesome and you do well your things, and then the measurement is money, it means that you were pretty awesome, you know, unless you're a drug dealer. But you know, usually money works, you know, as a measurement.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're working towards it. That's for sure.
And,
Yes.
you know, I don't fully agree with the way that things are going, but it's out of my control, and the system doesn't care whether I agree or not. But we're moving into an attention economy where having a certain level of followers, having a certain level of views on content on social media is a measure of your likeness, of how much people like you, want to see you, want to share you. And it's like, that's the way things are going. That's kind of like the reality. So I think it's really important for people to start leveraging this opportunity rather than see it and themselves as having these negative things, but rather see that as an opportunity to build. Kind of like when the internet came out, right? It's just opening doors, and there's some people that are leveraging it like very, very smart, and building those names for themselves, that when they can open up a company, or when they decide to open up a company, they already have a customer base.
Yeah.
Because their brand is their marketing. Like, people want to be a part of their name. Who is it is it Ryan Reynolds that started a company, and it's worth a few billion now?
I mean, he's unbelievable, man. Because
Yeah.
he's a great example, because everything he does, it's meaningful. Every he touches is meaningful. Wrexham, I don't know if you saw, like, he bought this soccer team in not in England. What's the other country that is in Great Britain?
Ireland.
Yes, well, not Ireland, but
Scotland?
not Scotland.
That's a different country.
It is in Great Britain, and it's actually under the British
Ah,
Empire.
okay.
But anyway, he bought it for 2 million. Now it's worth like whatever, like 10 million or something. You know what? But if you see the show, I'm a fan of the show. My Andrea and I watch it. You can see they bought the team for $2 million, and it was the last team. There was the last team of all England. You know, and they built it so amazingly with the town, with the people. So they actually cared for everyone in the town, everyone in the team. Now it actually went up and it's going up, and there's people all over the world coming to this little town that is called Wrexham to watch their soccer team, you know. And then he built, I think, that Jean brand. I think it's called Aviator or something, that he sold it for $600 million. And things like that. That he is a genius, but he understands branding. Branding is value. You know.
Same with Dwayne Johnson and his tequila company.
Yeah.
And like, he's someone that very early on, I think, also understood the power of branding.
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
from his name, from his presentation, his look, his aesthetic, and he's been able to be also like selective with the roles in film that he's in. That he's built this persona that certain people, it really appeals to them and they want to be a part of it. And now he's also blown up his tequila brand as well.
I would say,
Yeah,
well,
and you
their
can-
huge platforms helps. Sorry, go ahead.
Huge. You can say, but you can say, I can tell you that Dwayne Johnson is an awesome son and an awesome dad and a great partner on the tequila brand. And I can tell you that it's an awesome actor, but not actor, an awesome team player within the actors and all that stuff. But how do I know that? Only for watching his Instagram things. So,
Oh yeah.
so all that stuff that I just told you could be not real, but that's what I know. And how that I feel. So every time I see a picture of this guy or a post, I feel good. I just feel good because I know that he's a good guy. And and that's what he did. It is strategic. Obviously, he cannot fake it. He cannot fake all that. But at the same time, it is strategic. So you can actually build that persona within your own persona.
Yeah.
So with that being said, what are some practical ways? What's something that the viewers can, apply right now that you would say could help guide them towards building that personal brand for themselves? Like, what are some things that maybe questions they can answer or steps they can take, or what can they do to start building their brand today?
Well, the first thing that I would say is buy the book that I told you, the 90 Days for Whatever Brand thing. I would buy that one. Why? Because Dane is he comes from his company is the fastest growing branding company in Australia. He never went to school. He never went to design school or whatever, branding. He taught himself, and now he figured it out how it actually worked for him, and he proved it with other friends, with his best friends, and they did it, and it worked. So it took him 5 years to write this book. I know this because he told me, but now he's like, I want everyone to read this book and to follow. If you follow his Instagram, he's got like 600,000 followers, and it's 100% strategic. Like nothing, his growth is not a fluke. It's planned. So if you want to do it, learn from what he did, and do it. So right now what I'm doing is pretty much doing the same thing. So you have to do something with the algorithm. So the algorithm is going to learn about you in the next 90 days, you know? So you have to also be very technical. So you have to understand what an algorithm is, how it works, how the YouTube work, how Instagram works, blah 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 blah. You know. So, but I think the most important question is, what is your purpose? So I think the faster you find out what your purpose is, the faster you will grow, because then you will aim to that, like focused, laser focused to that thing, you know?
So having clarity in your purpose, your why, right?
Yeah.
Having clarity in your mission, what is that you're trying to achieve it and why, and then having a strategy as to how you're going to present yourself. So and also getting really clear on what your identity is, right? Having a brand identity and then a brand strategy. Would those be like the three things, like purpose, brand identity, brand strategy, and then
Yeah.
converting that into a marketing strategy and figuring out how you're going to be telling that story, right? I think for that, you need to zoom out like a bird's eye view and
Yeah.
kind of start seeing the past, the present, and the future, and how you're going to be painting that picture throughout a consistent amount of output of content, because you're going to have to be putting yourself out there. Social media
Yeah.
being like possibly, not possibly, definitely the number one asset I think that you can leverage today, because it's free.
Yeah.
You can do it yourself, and the barrier to entry is like next to none. The only issue I think is that there's always going to be competition, which is a good
Yeah.
thing, not a bad thing. But
It
there's
is a good
always
thing.
people that are going to go beyond what you're willing to do to get known. And so in an attention economy, you have to be willing to put yourself out there, because you're competing with the people that have more money, more time, more skill to do that. So really it
Yes.
just comes down to doing it. Like if you don't have a strategy, you're not clear, I think putting yourself out there and figuring it out as you go is better than sitting down with a pen and paper and getting nowhere. Would you say?
I say that, yeah, you are totally right. And I remember there was one time that I was thinking, how does this actually works? You know, so I came up with the 6 C's. And this might work, it might not work, but it's funny. I was in New York, in Dumbo, in Brooklyn, on one side of the bridge, okay, and it's all fancy and expensive and beautiful and that kind of thing. And then you cross the bridge, and you get to this other side where it's like tourists, tourists, and like it's just not fancy anymore. It's just like New York, okay. But then in this place there was these 5 black guys, super fit, like super like this, dancing in the street, like amazing, doing the break dance and this and that and whatever, and unbelievable, and a lot of people around these guys, that you would put money there. But I was thinking, if I take these 5 guys and put them in Dumbo, it wouldn't work, because then it's all fancy and this, there's no that much, so it's a different context, but it works over here, So I was thinking, the most important thing for everything you're launching or doing should be first and foremost context. So these guys, these 5 black guys, they say, we are built, we're awesome, we're dancing, we are amazing dancers, let's do our thing. Where? Let's go to this place where are all these tourists. That's context. That's the first C. Then, what are we going to do? Where are we gonna dance? You dance first, I dance next. That's the concept. 5 guys dancing. And the fact that they're black and all these tourists are Chinese and Mexican and whatever, that's also like attractive for tourists, okay? So you context, you have content, a concept, and then you have a content. So what is the content? They are the content, okay? The dancing is the content, Okay, so now you have the content, and then you have the collaboration, which is also very important, you know. Because if you think about it, the moment you start doing something like a Lone Ranger just by yourself, it doesn't work. It will not work, especially today. So you have to think, how are you going to collaborate with whom, you know? Then the collaboration, you have the community, you know. So you have to think about, like, what is this community that I'm part of? Not they are part of my community. I have to be part of this community that are gonna, you know. So that's very important. And then consistency, consistency. So you have to be consistent in not failing. So whatever you are promising, which is the part of the promise of your brand, you have to keep it forever, you know, because that's the only way to grow. So that's why I came to, so all these, looking at these 5 black guys, you know, because every day they would come, the 5, I'm tired. It doesn't matter. You have to come, you know, because it works with 5 guys, you know. So all that, and they created this community, because you never know, you know, there's other people coming, seeing this works. They built another, you know. So it's just mushrooms if you use this kind of like a format or whatever.
Wow, I love that. That's great. The 6 C's. Was it 6?
Yeah.
6.
Yeah, there's 6 C's. So I wrote them. I have it here. So I wrote it that then and there. So I have context, concept, content. No. Context, concept, content, collaboration, community, and consistency.
Wow. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It makes sense. We see that, you know, with even what we're trying to do. Every single one of those C's is relevant to some part of what we're trying to do right now with our own brand and with social media and yeah, with our careers. So
Yeah.
Yeah, the community part is a huge one.
Yeah.
We see it a lot, that the follower count gives you a sense that there's other people that are also wanting it, so it makes you want to be a part of it. But that's not it alone. It's when you start breaking out into other elements of community, such as a newsletter, a Facebook group, a school community or group, that where you can actually interact with other people that are there for the same reason. And that starts to become like a massive, massive asset for people building brands, and for also corporations building brands, is the community element, because community sustains itself. So you can actually just bring people together with a common goal, and you know, somebody can ask a question and you don't have to answer it as a business owner. You have other people that are in different journeys or in different stages of the journey that can come in and help each other, and it becomes a really cool, appealing thing that you just want to be a part of. It's I think that's the cool thing about social media, that it opens up this second road, so it's not one-way communication, it's two-way communication, and you could be as like an equal part of the brand as the brand is itself, right? Without the followers, without the community commenting, really the brand is nothing. People have to be a part of it for it to be something.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything that you want to touch on, or you feel that people should know?
Yeah, I would say like, never stop learning and doing. So those 2 things are so important. So be humble always. Never think that you're more than anyone else. And I think that's the way that you're gonna grow, you know. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And then yeah, I mean, in terms of branding and stuff, yeah, I would say practice whatever you're learning, you know. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
And I think with what you're saying about being humble, that's key, because by being humble, you'll be authentic. And if you're trying to be something that you're not, or the ego gets to you that like, oh, you're my brand and my followers or whatever, then you can lose that one thing that actually makes you really stand out. I think like the human element of that personal brand for sure.
Yeah, that's super important.
I almost forgot. We have a bit of a hot seat. Questions. We'll just ask you like rapid fire. We'll ask you a question. You can answer the first question that comes to mind. Sorry, the first answer that comes to mind. Instagram or TikTok?
TikTok.
Oh, okay. Camera, professional camera or DSLR or whatever, or iPhone?
iPhone.
Delegate or do it yourself?
Do it yourself.
Video or photo?
Video.
Early mornings or late nights?
Early mornings.
Favorite food?
Ah. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, okay. Well, tapas.
Love it. Favorite book?
Favorite book. Oh, maybe this one. Fake Perfection. Yeah, this one is my favorite book. No. I have a favorite book. I'm gonna show it to you right now. I had it here. It's this one.
Let's see it.
It's this one. It's not how good you are, it's how good you want to be. This one. It's a tiny book. This is my Bible. You can see how old is this. Yeah.
Oh, is that by design or it's because you read it so many times?
Yeah, I read it so many times that yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe it was a design choice.
No. Yeah.
Clever. Nice.
Favorite film?
Alien.
And favorite director?
Kubrick. Stanley Kubrick.
Favorite musician
Favorite musician.
or band? Because I know you like bands too.
Oh, there's so many, man. Maybe Sepultura.
Mexican?
Brazilian. It's Brazilian. Sepultura are Brazilian.
Oh,
Yeah, and Lord.
really? Okay, I did not expect that. That's cool. Okay, awesome. Oh yeah, I wanted to ask something like AI related because I know you're big into AI, right? And that whole
Yeah,
world.
actually,
I
right
don't
now
know.
I'm taking a course on a Spanish university, AI.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome. I guess the question would be Midjourney or ChatGPT, or would the better comparison be Midjourney or DALL-E, though it is part of ChatGPT?
A journey.
Yeah. You're the first one that's kind of introduced us to that program. And are you still heavily using it and for your designs and your
No. Right now, what I'm actually learning on artificial intelligence is blowing my mind, and is pretty much using GPT, not ChatGPT, but GPT with other modules. That makes it much more powerful than whatever you know. It's incredible.
Wow.
You'll know more about it. I will posting a lot about AI, lots of AI.
Okay.
Are you a big proponent, or how do you feel about using, AI or something like ChatGPT to like help you with your branding, messaging, positioning, marketing, all those things? Like, would you say it's an ethical way of doing so? Like, are you a fan of that, or is it unethical?
It is not unethical, and I'm 100% of like for AI. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
a bit of a
yeah. There's, I
controversial
mean,
topic, but
there's so many papers about this, like philosophical papers, scientific papers, on is this ethical, is this unethical, and I think those aren't even the right questions, you know, because at one point being black was unethical, or you know what I mean. So it's also freaking subjective to the context and the times. But the reality is, where is AI going to take us from now on, and what are the jobs that are going to actually cease to exist, and why, and is that fair? And I think the awesome my own response to that is, we cannot as human beings understand what is and what is not fair. So justice for us is impossible to understand. Then because of that, we cannot pretty much understand if AI is fair or not fair. And then all the jobs that are going to disappear is because there are jobs that are useless, but are useless tomorrow. So anything but the ones that are not going to disappear are going to they have three characteristics: creativity, critical thinking, and curiosity. If within what you do you are using these three things, you are going to rule the world with AI. If you don't have this, you're gone. Like, forget about it.
Would you say that's because AI will, you don't think AI will ever reach the level of being able to have those things?
There is a question on when, not if.
Right. Exactly, right? Because it's always evolving.
Yes. So there is everything that you can know right now is not real, but they say maybe in 100 years, that's where AI is gonna actually be creative. Because right today is not creative, is not curious. Everything AI does is because there's an input from the human, but from a creative human. There's no critical thinking behind AI. It cannot be today, but maybe in 100 years.
Yeah,
We'll see.
it kind of puts into perspective films that we once saw as 100% fictional, and it starts to make them more and more real in a way, like The Matrix or Terminator or iRobot, right? These films that tell you of a future that's now not so distant, where AI does have the ability to think creatively, critically, and critically, and what was the other one? And curiously, right? Like in The Matrix, you have the Sentinels that are exploring the caves and looking for things, and they can problem solve and find humans. And same with Terminator. So I don't know. That's just kind of like my thought process. If we really keep going down this route to see how far the rabbit hole goes, we're gonna find out, and it's gonna be one of those realities that I think could be very positive if the people that are driving the ship take it towards a positive route, right? Because technically all these jobs that we're going to lose, that just means more freedom for people in a way. But the other side of the coin is that it could also go towards this bleak, dark enslavement of humanity, like a lot of these films do present the scenario, right? That's just kind of my thought. It's the uncertainty, but I guess we are in control of where we take this depending on how we end up using it. And hopefully there is if not taking the approach of being just or fair, at least responsible. Because at the end of the day, it's not our generation, but the future generations that are going to bear the weight of those decisions that are made today.
Yeah, but I mean, if you think about it, you don't need AI for people to become idiots, and useless. That's the real. Think about today. What's happening today? Look at the manipulation and ideology of masses, all over the world. And it's not AI. It's the manipulation from humans that are just using the same methods and propaganda that Russia, that the Nazis, that Mussolini, that all these guys used. It's exactly the same thing. And you go back, that was branding. That was the the beginning of the perfect marketing. You know, the perfect logo, the colors, the design of the uniforms made by Hugo Boss. You know what? Like the discourse, the copy. So it was perfect. Yes, it was perfect brainwashing, which is happening today. Same thing. So this woke ideology and whatever, it's pure manipulation, you know. And you have masses of zombies, you know, walking on the streets, like without thinking. Like there's no critical thinking anymore. It's extinct, you know. So AI is actually something that I think is gonna be a blessing. It's gonna be a blessing. You'll see.
Okay, I haven't heard that take on it yet, so I'm curious to see.
Well, that's more reason to keep learning, keep being creative, keep putting yourself out there, keep building a name for yourself, sharing your story, putting yourself out there, and leverage it because you have the opportunity and the freedom to do so today.
And
Yes.
stay curious.
Yes, stay curious, 100%.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time, the knowledge, the wisdom that you shared today. It's a blessing for us to have you today, and we look forward to more chats in the future.
So yeah, so where can people find you? Where can they follow along?
I mean, the way the most part I post on Instagram, and I have Monzoni. I know it has Joss Monzoni, so Joss Monzoni, or the other one that I just started is Monzoni 1200.
1200.
1200.
200.
Monzoni 1200.
We'll put it on the screen.
Gotcha. Okay, awesome.
Thank you, thank you. No, thank you guys. El que siga la manada no llega a nada.
He who follows the crowd reaches or arrives nowhere.
Ah, okay, that makes more sense. All right, there we go.
Oh man,
All right.
that was good. Thank you guys. It was awesome. Yeah, I hope something from this helps you in any way.